Let us look at the moment. The moment. Looking at the skies over London on the afternoon of June 23rd, 2026, one gets the immediate impression of a situation that has simply run its course, much like a long labour that finally resolves, not with a roar, but with a necessary collapse. The Sun at 2 degrees Cancer sits in a watery, secretive trine to the true node, suggesting that Keir Starmer's resignation is fated. The timing is less a matter of choice and more an alignment with a pre-written national script. The Sun is also barely separating from a square to the UK's natal Uranus, a signature of abrupt departure and an electric shock to the established order. The mood of the public, captured by the moon in Libra, is one of weighing and measuring. There is a desire for fairness, perhaps a feeling that the scales have tipped too far one way and need correction. The ascendant at 20 degrees Virgo filters this event through a lens of service and duty, indicating that while the personality of the government is changing, the focus remains on the nuts and bolts of administration, on cleaning up a mess, rather than starting a revolution. However, the backdrop is far from quiet. The cyclic index sits high at 811.6 and is rising, signaling a period of dispersal where energies scatter and control is harder to maintain. This is not a quiet handover in the dead of night, it is a noisy, volatile transition. The lead-up to this moment, marked by Mars in Aries throughout the spring, would have been aggressive and fraught with conflict, likely seeing internal party disputes or strikes that exhausted the current administration's mandate. Let us consider what it touches. With the United Kingdom's 1801 chart as the primary subject, the heaviness of this moment is evident. Transiting Saturn is conjunct the UK's true node within a third of a degree. In mundane astrology, Saturn is the lord of structure, limits, and hard reality, while the node represents the path the nation is destined to walk. This conjunction implies a painful but necessary correction to the country's trajectory. The government is being forced to confront the limits of its power or its finances. Starmer's departure is essentially the nation bumping into a wall it could not climb over, necessitating a change of driver. Andy Burnham, the secondary entity, steps into this pressure cooker. The synastry between Burnham and the United Kingdom is telling. The UK's Mars in late Taurus trines Burnham's moon. This suggests that the prevailing climate of frustration or stubborn economic stagnation, Mars in Taurus, actually resonates with Burnham's emotional makeup and public style. He is a familiar fit for an angry nation. He is well placed to channel public discontent as his chart harmonizes with the country's martial energy. Transits to Burnham's own natal chart confirm his readiness. The transiting Sun in Cancer applies a supportive sextile to his Saturn in Virgo, granting him the aura of authority and maturity required for the office. He is not swept in by chaos, but rather assumes the mantle with a gravitas that suggests he has been preparing for this specific burden. The transiting Sun also trines his Jupiter, offering a temporary veneer of optimism or public goodwill. However, the transiting Venus quincunxes his moon, a small, nagging signature that his personal connection to the public or his internal comfort with the role may require some awkward adjustment initially. Let us see how it rolls forward. The story does not end with the handshake on the steps of number 10. The months following June 2026 are dominated by outer planet movements that suggest Burnham's tenure will be defined by radical structural reform rather than mild adjustment. Through the summer of 2026, Uranus forms a trine to Pluto while simultaneously sextiling Neptune. This is a rare generational aspect of technological and ideological shift. It points to a government actively dismantling old systems, likely within the NHS or constitutional frameworks, to build something more efficient but arguably more austere. A total solar eclipse on August 12, 2026, at 20 degrees Leo, falls just after the UK's own Leo placements. Eclipses act as wildcards. This one suggests a high-profile crisis involving the executive or sovereign powers that forces Burnham to abandon his honeymoon period early. By February 2027, an annular solar eclipse in Aquarius opposing that Leo degree confirms a struggle between the leadership and the collective will, perhaps signaling public pushback against the very reforms the Uranus-Pluto transit demands. There is a distinct feeling of steel fist in a velvet glove here. The tarot imagery overlaying this period mirrors the astrological tower card. Structures are crumbling, but out of the debris comes a clearer view of the sky. Burnham enters not as a savior, but as a pragmatic architect, clearing a site that has become unsafe. Watch for the autumn of 2026. Jupiter's trine to Saturn in late August attempts to stabilize the economy, but the lingering Uranus square to the UK's Pluto ensures that the public mood remains volatile and resistant to being told what to do. Let us turn to the summary. The transition of power on June 23, 2026 marks a karmic correction point for the United Kingdom, where structural fatigue forces a change in leadership, just as the nation enters a period of radical technological and systemic overhaul. First, economic retrenchment. Driven by Saturn conjunct the UK's true node, the new administration will be forced to implement strict, unpopular fiscal limits immediately upon taking office. Next, ideological overhaul. The Uranus-Pluto trine throughout late 2026 signals an aggressive push to modernize state infrastructure, likely clashing with traditionalist voices in the civil service. Then the leadership crisis. The total solar eclipse in Leo during August 2026 suggests a sudden high-stakes executive challenge, potentially involving the health of a key figure or a constitutional dilemma that interrupts the new government's momentum. And finally, public unrest. Uranus squaring the UK's Pluto indicates that while Burnham may feel like the right fit for the nation's anger, Mars trine Moon, he will face intense, stubborn resistance from a public unwilling to accept further sacrifices. The situation resembles a difficult birth. The old order is exhausted and must depart, but the new one arrives into a world that is immediately demanding and unforgiving, leaving little time for sentimentality. Let us look at the recent history and where this is heading. Starmer's departure is not merely a political casualty, but the latest manifestation of the profound structural erosion symbolized by Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. This rare alignment suggests a period where the boundaries of reality dissolve, forcing a collective confrontation with the fatigue of established systems. It sets the stage for the radical overhaul hinted at in the incoming administration, binding the UK's destiny to a global narrative of mandatory reinvention. Looking forward, the astrological weather intensifies this pressure for transformation. The Uranus trine Pluto aspect, peaking in late July, tends to accelerate revolutionary undercurrents, likely driving the aggressive modernization of state infrastructure despite public resistance. As the summer progresses, the total solar eclipse at 20 degrees Leo on August 12th looms as a potential flashpoint for executive authority, threatening to sever the early momentum of the new leadership. These threads suggest that while the players change, the slow-moving currents of history ensure that all nations navigate the same turbulent waters of structural collapse and renewal. Before you go, I can feel the weight of this transition you've just heard about. It is never easy to watch the structures of our world crumble, even when change is necessary. If you are feeling uncertain about how these sweeping national shifts and the upcoming eclipses will touch your own life, an annual transit forecast would offer you a steadfast personal roadmap, highlighting the key dates and themes that will define your year ahead. For a deeper understanding of the forces driving this upheaval, I recommend a tarot full reading, particularly the Golden Dawn situation analysis spread. Its focus on the hidden causes and foundations of a situation mirrors the very dynamics we are seeing in the world right now, helping you find clarity within the chaos. Both of these are available here at Occultique whenever you feel ready to look deeper.